This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special edition of This Week in Agribusiness. Yeah, it's a little bit different setting than usual, as you can see. We're at the Case IH headquarters in Racine, Wisconsin. This is the Experience Center, and it is, in its own right, a special place to be sure, because there's a lot of history that you can see in the Experience Center. We'll show some of that as we visit here over the next hour, celebrating a very special year in the history of this company. In 2023, they'll be celebrating 100 years of the Farmall brand, the Farmall tractor, with a legacy going back, of course, many decades, and a whole bunch of iconic models. And we'll talk about those in a few minutes here. We'll visit with representatives of the company. We have a very well-known tractor author and photographer and researcher who'll be joining us, and some folks from the farm who'll also have their very own personal stories, as does Max Armstrong, of course. If you've spent any time around me, you've wondered when Max would stop talking about tractors or his tractor, which, by the way, we happen to have one of them here, as we'll share with you a little bit later. Let me introduce to you the folks that we're going to be visiting with here in the first segment to talk about what's happening in this anniversary of the Farmall tractor. First of all, joining me here is Kurt Coffey, Vice President of North America for Case IH. Good to see you, sir.
It's good to see you, Max. It's humbling to have you here in Racine, helping us celebrate our 100th anniversary of Farmall. We're just really pleased to have you here today.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor for me to be here. And Joe Miller is here as well, Director of Marketing for Case IH Tractors. It's great to see you, sir.
Yeah, great to see you as well, Max.
Both of you have farm backgrounds, as a matter of fact. And so I would imagine to work in this industry with the equipment that you grew up with is just a special treat. I know when I'm around the brand, because I think back to the days of my youth and how much those machines meant to my family, to feed the family, to put a roof over us, to give us an opportunity to go on and further our education. Share some of your thoughts about that, Kurt.
Yeah, I would say one word: it's humbling. It is the most noble industry to be in, to know that what we do each and every day feeds and fuels the world, and to be able to be part of Case IH around equipment I grew up with and celebrate 100 years of Farmall. The word that I would give you is it's just completely humbling.
Did you ever imagine that you would be making your living someday with these machines?
You know, growing up on a farm, this has been my entire life. So I've been in the seed and chemical business, and I've been in the equipment business. So I always knew this was my path. But to be able to sit here and kick off the 100th year of Farmall, an iconic brand globally. You know, if you take a step back, you know, we're narrowed in on Farmall, but if you take a step back and look at Case IH on a global basis, we're 180 years old. But when you then narrow in on such an icon such as Farmall, it's known all around the world. It's just, again, it's very humbling to be able to be part of this.
You still have a connection to the farm in Illinois?
I do. My brother runs our farm with my father down in central Illinois. And I don't know when I'll be back there permanently. I'm back there quite a bit now. But that'll be where I'm at, you know, after my career. I love agriculture.
I've seen some of your posts in the social media. I can tell you enjoy your time there and really have a great respect for what goes on there.
It's my passion. If you do what you love, it's really not a job. And to be able to serve Case IH and to celebrate Farmall it's a passion. So.
Joe, you too have very firm roots on the farm, and you spend a lot of time there.
Yes, sir. Actually lived there. I'm from northern Indiana. Our farm's in Fulton County, Indiana. And I moved back to the farm as a field rep for Case IH. And so with that being home and being close to the farm, like Kurt, my dad and my brother run the farming operation. I help out whenever I can. And it does mean a lot. My kids now, the fourth generation that participate on that farm, they work that ground, they work with the equipment. It's really a great place. It's a wonderful industry. It's all I've known. And it's something I'm glad to be able to offer my kids as an opportunity to work the land, feed the world, and you know, work hard. I mean, farming's hard work, and there's nothing, like Kurt said, that's more noble than farming.
One thing that occurs to me is at this moment, you guys are the face for the company, but I think of the legions of people behind you who have done so much and continue to do so much to make this equipment available to farmers. Your ranks are deep, and there are a lot of important people, aren't there, Kurt?
Yeah, we have a dedicated workforce that is successful, Max, because it's their passion. You know, you're as successful as a business leader as your people. And they are fighting very hard each and every day to make sure that we just keep moving forward here at Case IH. And again, it really is, it's because many of us are from a farm. We have a campaign called Built by Farmers. And we started that as an anthem, because our equipment is engineered and delivered by farmers because we are farmers. But that's what actually makes us successful, because behind the farmer mentality is a solution, which brings forth the solutions that we bring each and every day at Case IH.
One thing that occurs to me also, Joe, as we look at these machines, the ones that have preceded these, but they're very modern machines, the engineers, the designers, the people that have really brought the concept to life are very important. They have been and they still are, aren't they?
Yeah, very much so. And I think the point that I would emphasize is that we're one team, is that we work together. Kurt's mentioned that it's a global brand. We have global manufacturing footprints, we have global engineering folks, and we have global support people and product specialists located across, specifically in North America, all the states, and in the provinces of Canada as well. It takes a legion of people to be out there supporting our dealers shoulder to shoulder. Our rallying cry here is that we're going to be customer first, and we're going to do this as one team. And really, with the tractor business that we go forward with in North America, that's what makes it work. That's what makes it click, is hand in hand with our dealers, hand in hand with our customers as a unified front.
The brand name Farmall is so strong. You'll be driving down the road and you'll see it on a vehicle. My wife and I were on a plane about 3 years ago. And there was a young man coming down the aisle by himself. He couldn't have been more than a teenager, and he had that Farmall hat on. And this was not a rural area. We were flying out of a major city at the time. And she said, "Did you see that hat?" I said, "Yeah, of course."
Or tattoos, Max. I've had tattoos come up to me at the farm show. I don't know if that's allowed here, but
No, you're exactly right. I had a woman call me and say that her daughter wanted to get a proper Super M tattoo, and she said, "Can you share the emblem with me?" And again, it's a very strong reminder of just how strong that brand is and has been.
Well, go ahead, Kurt. I'm sorry.
If you zoom in, 100 years of Farmall as a celebration, and we're excited. If you zoom in and talk about the power of Farmall, it's incredible. It's a testimony of 100 years of solving problems. We say the Farmall can do anything. I have a 35 new Farmall at home. We dig, we mow, we even maybe move a boat around with it. It's an amazing brand that has lived 100 years because of its utility in all farm types.
And it continues to, as you point out, provide that opportunity for so many folks, all walks of life.
Yes.
And that's a great story. A little bit later on, I want to talk with the two of you about that first time. Everybody recalls that first time when they were in that seat and let that clutch go, or someone helped you with that process. It's one thing that you just never ever forget. It's always a cherished moment. So we'll be back with you two in just a few minutes here. Kurt Coffey and Joe Miller joining us from Case IH as we're at the Experience Center in Racine, Wisconsin. Before we go any farther in this weekend's broadcast, here's your chance, personally, to celebrate 100 years of Farmall. There is a special collector's edition calendar. And you see this QR code on the screen? We'll show it again a little bit later on in the broadcast. But for the first 1,000 who then go online to get this calendar, you'll receive one of these special edition Case IH Farmall 100 calendars. So grab that shot now. It'll be coming back a little bit later in the broadcast. But right now, we want you to meet a special guest, Lee Cloncher, who is one of my favorite authors, researchers, photographers about tractors. Arguably one of the best, Lee, and it's just a wonderful opportunity to have you on this celebratory broadcast with us, celebrating Farmall 100. And you have a history with the brand, too, going back more than a few years. Tell me about that.
Absolutely, Max. My Farmall story begins back right after I got out of college. I was asked to write a book about farmall tractors. And I was a 20-year-old kid and decided to go to a local farm show and check out the scene. I knew about machines, but I didn't know that much about collector tractors. And I was squeezing in to take a shot of a close-up shot of an old farmall regular. And the smell of that tractor reminded me of my grandfather. And my grandfather and I bonded over machines. He was a dairy farmer in northern Wisconsin, and he loved technology and tractors, and he always encouraged me to follow my dreams. So when that hit me, that was kind of the moment where I felt that farmall could be an important thing to me, and books could be very important. I also, that was my very first book, and I ended up doing a dozen books. So it was a start of my journey in my professional career.
That makes it really special, doesn't it? I mean, you've done books in other fields. You've done books on motorcycles, for example.
Absolutely, and some travel. I've done a book about traveling in Alaska, so a number of things, but farmall kind of started that off.
Your research is so thorough in these books. You know, I laugh a little bit because guys are always coming up to me at shows and they'll say, well, you know, that's not accurate the way that was on that tractor there. That didn't come out of the plant that way. And you get so many different opinions when you're visiting with folks. And part of that relates to how they were brought up with the machine, I think. But you've gone back into the archives on so many different journeys, researching how it actually was at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of what I do as a journalist is find great stories. And I love to tell great stories. And to find those, you have to dig deep and look into archives to find the history of those things.
1923. That's the year that we're celebrating for the farmall, but take us back a little bit farther in the development of the tractor by International Harvester.
Absolutely. And that the development of agriculture and tractors, it really struck home with me when I was working on the books, because it changed society. So the farmall itself is one of the most important machines in agricultural history. And in 1923, what happened was IH was developing machines, was developing a wide variety of machines, and they started on something called the motor cultivator. The motor cultivator was a spindly machine. The idea was it would just cultivate, and it had big wheels, kind of like the farmall. Unfortunately, it was extremely expensive, it tended to tip over, and it was underpowered. So they sold, I think, about 30 of those. But the man that worked on that machine, Bert Benjamin, loved the idea, and he kept developing. And as he developed, he did all kinds of crazy things. He was like a mad scientist working in Chicago Tractor Works. He put the engine on the front, he put the engine on the back, he made it reversible, he had big wheels in the front, big wheels in the back, but eventually he got a design that started working very, very well. And that became, he called it the Farm-All, and that became the farmall.
He was the one who came up with that name.
He and his group, yes, absolutely.
Farm-All.
Right. The idea being, and the idea was it would be a multi-purpose tractor. Nobody had developed that yet in the early 1920s. They couldn't cultivate, plow, and turn a belt. And a lot of people knew that when that machine was built, it would be a huge hit and would be huge, huge money. This was like the computer in the 1970s. It would be a huge innovation.
You know, it's interesting, some of those non-farmall early tractors, if you find one today, it's very rare, and sometimes they're sought after simply because they had so little utility, and not many people bought them, right?
Yes, they were so difficult to operate, they were so big and expensive. So most of them were made for these very, very large farms or traveling operators that would rent them out, and incredibly difficult to operate. You had to really know a lot. So when the farmall came out, that was a much easier machine to use.
I can't help but think what was happening in the world back in those years. That's interesting too, is it not, to remember, you know, this was a period between the wars, but it was just ahead of the Great Depression also.
Absolutely. That played, the Great Depression played a big role. It depressed prices and changed all kinds of things at that time. So.
And at some point, International Harvester decided this Farmall, this is the tractor to run with.
They did, and when the Farmalls were still put out in small numbers to start, and the people that had them reacted incredibly positively. So, in fact, IH was not sure the Farmall was the direction they wanted to go. There were some other machines they had put a lot of effort into. But when they sent a lot of them to Texas, actually, because Texas was a territory they were developing at that time, and a group of Texan dealers wrote a letter to Chicago and said, hey, look, we love this, and if you're not going to build it, we will. And so IH in 1923 started really putting that out, and the reaction to it was incredible. It sold at such a level that when they built Farmall Works to build them, they were building 200 tractors a day. It actually sort of eliminated Ford from the market. The Farmall absolutely, it was the first tractor that could truly replace the horse.
And Farmalls were built certainly in more than one location, as you point out.
Yes, they were built all over. They eventually built the Farmall plant to build those machines.
And the lion's share of those came out of that plant at Rock Island, Illinois.
Correct, yeah.
It covered a lot of models. When you think about it, all of those models that came down through the line there over the course of those years, up until 1985, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That first Farmall built a heritage that lasted so long.
You mentioned some interesting personalities. We probably ought to spend a little time this weekend talking about some of those folks. I want to come back to you a little bit later on here on this weekend's broadcast to share some more comments about Farmall 100 as we're celebrating this big year with Lee Cloncher, author, photographer, and the one who's given us these great Farmall books. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness as we continue our tribute to the Farmall brand and celebrating the 100th anniversary of Farmall for 2023. Back here at the desk with us, Kurt Coffey and Joe Miller from Case IH. As we look at that, Joe, I referenced this earlier, and I sometimes almost break out in a sweat thinking about that first time that I drove the tractor by myself. We grew up in a lot of hills in southwestern Indiana, but it was in those hills where Dad decided to turn me loose, as a matter of fact, not down in the flat bottomland. Do you remember your first opportunity of driving the tractor on your Indiana farm?
Yes, clearly. It was my grandfather's 53 Super M. We still have it on our farm today. My son and I are working on getting it roadworthy again and field worthy again, but it was, I can't tell you when, in the late 80s. I can't tell you my age. I remember having to pull the bottom of the steering wheel to get the clutch all the way in. And my dad gave me the instructions of where reverse was, first was, and fourth. And that's all you really needed to know on an M until you figured out road gear, right? So, but we were cleaning out fence rows just to the south of my grandfather's house. And my job was, as they cleaned out the fence row and cut the mulberry trees down, was to come up, hook up with the log chain, drive the tractor back to the woods, unhook the log chain, and come back and get the next one. So it was, you got to shift the tractor from reverse to fourth. Those were the two gears we used most commonly on Miller Farms there in Rochester, Indiana. And again, that tractor holds a very special place in my heart, not only because it was my grandfather's, but it was because of the first tractor I drove. And I've got a lot of pride that my son and I are working with it together, and I want him to be able to use it. We talk about 100 years of Farmall. And it's not just the 100 years that's important. I mean, in that exact model that I just shared with you is 4 generations of my family that has been tied to that piece of equipment that's helped the farm go. I mean, it fed the cows, it did the chores, it's done its share of field work as well. And now it's to the point where I can get the next generation going. So 100 years is important, Farmalls are important, but it's the generations of farmers that are impacted by that it really gets me excited. And nostalgic at the same time.
We talk about multi-generational farms, and there is a great source of pride. You know, whether it's the seventh or eighth generation, as we've encountered at times out on the road, or even the first generation. I was with a first generation farmer not too many weeks ago, and they can get into this business, and you provide an opportunity for them to do so as you work with growers. You have a lot of experiences, no doubt, as you think back, Kurt Coffey, on your growing up on the farm with these tractors as well.
Yeah, I actually last week was with my parents, and I said, hey, what are your first memories of Farmall? And my mom piped up really quick, oh yeah, we had Farmalls when I was a kid to raise cattle, and she said it had a loader on it. Now, she didn't remember the model, but on my mom's side, they had Farmalls, and on my dad's side, he came and produced a picture. And it's a picture I submitted, I think it'll be up here, but it's from the 40s, right, when Grandpa came back from the war. I believe it was an H, I'm not for sure. I know Lee is here, he could probably correct me, but there's a lot of history in the family. Growing up, I don't remember the very first tractor I drove, but I can tell you we do have a 1066 she's pretty tired, probably a restoration candidate, but it still runs augers and mowers around the farm, and just a lot of history through our farm, all the way back to my grandparents with Farmalls.
I think there are a lot of other family experiences and reflections that we think about, you know, not just the field operations, but these tractors were there, as you pointed out, Joe, to perform other tasks, maybe to pull a neighbor out of a ditch on a snowy winter night. I was thinking about that, the times that my dad got on a tractor to drive down and help somebody who had straightened out the turn down there. So they just were used in so many ways.
Yeah, that's why we say it can do. I mean, we use tractors in farming operations each and every day, but like I said, we use it to mow, we use it to drag the boat down to the swimming hole. It's really a machine for everything, right? So.
And as a part of this celebration this year, we're going to be constantly talking about the heritage and the 100 years and reflecting back many times. There are a lot of exciting things ahead. We'll talk about those a little bit later, some of the things to come, but you'll be at a lot of shows, as a matter of fact, in the weeks ahead, will you not?
Yeah, we're going to start off at the NCBA show really in February, and then the spring shows or the first quarter shows between National Farm Machinery Show, World Ag Expo, Commodity Classic. There's a number of them that just really, we stay quite active in the first quarter, and then we're going to really celebrate and have a lot of fun discussions culminating at the Farm Progress Show in 2023 when we're in Illinois.
You'll be out and about quite often at these shows in the weeks ahead, and you see families coming up to you. I know I've seen this at Louisville, for example, at the National Farm Machinery Show. When I've been there in the Case IH display, there's a lot of recollecting, I guess you might say, memories that come forward at that point.
There is, and I think with just a famous brand like Farmall, the customers that will come up and want to talk to you about their Farmall product that they have, or their grandfather's Farmall H, or maybe the 1456 they grew up on. A lot of talk about gold demonstrators. I can go on and on about those. I kind of like those as well. But it's a great time to not only talk about the future of Case IH and the future of Farmall, but to really come back and remember that this is an iconic brand. These are iconic pieces of equipment that have helped farmers through the really good times in farming, some of the challenges of time in farming, and their connection to that equipment is very, very important. We love talking about that.
I think we're going to see soon, Kurt, he's going to have one of those demonstrators in his lineup there. Joe's going to add to his collection. You guys hang around for a few minutes because I want to bring you back in. We want to talk a little bit later on here about what's to come in this 100 years, the celebration Farmall 100 through 2023. Stay with us here. We'll be back with more of this special edition of This Week in Agribusiness, this New Year's weekend edition of This Week in Agribusiness. This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH. Welcome back to this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness. Coming to you from Racine, Wisconsin. The Case IH headquarters, the Experience Center here, where we have a lot of history around us. Putting the Farmall tractor in the spotlight, the 100th anniversary of Farmall in 2023. We're visiting also with folks who had experiences with these tractors over the years, and Holly Oldenburg falls into that category. You don't live on a farm right now, but you grew up on a farm, right?
That's
Holly?
right, that's right. Yes, my husband Andy and I live in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, but I grew up on my family's farm near Decorah, Iowa. My family's been farming there since the 30s, and it's currently a beef and crop growing operation.
Describe that area. That northern Iowa area has quite a few hills to it,
Oh,
does it not?
it's beautiful.
Close to the rivers.
Yeah. Our farm is located right along the Upper Iowa River, lots of rolling hills, rocky bluffs. It's a really special spot, and I think often of something my grandfather told me. He was a lifelong farmer there, World War II vet, and he said to me, "Holly, I've been all around this world and I've never seen a place better than here." And I think about that often. I haven't seen as many places as he did, but I think he might be onto something.
That greatest generation, those World War II veterans were called, and for good reason. And they had such a strong tie to the Farmall brand over so many years when you think about it. Because I think about, my dad. We had a Super M and then the Super H on the farm there, and other models to come behind that. What were some of the tractors that your dad had?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I should mention too that my parents were blessed with 4 daughters, and we were all my dad's #1 farm hand. It was a very hands-on upbringing, chores before school, after school, chores all summer long. But I can't think of many chores that didn't include a red tractor. Whether it was hauling hay bales or grinding feed, there was always a red tractor involved. One of the more special ones was a 1954 Super MTA that my great-grandfather bought brand new from the implement in town. It's still on the farm today, which is really cool. And there must have been something about those MTAs, because my dad actually bought a second 54 Super MTA in the 80s. And about 15 years ago, he worked with my brother-in-law to refinish it. And it kind of became a part of our life off the farm too then. I have many good memories of my dad driving that tractor through small town parades, pulling our family behind in a wagon. Granted, now our family is 18 people deep with husbands and kids, and it's a lot of fun.
And it was on a Farmall, no doubt, that your dad taught you how to drive.
That's right. His teaching philosophy was just kind of get on and go, so we learned quickly.
The Farmall brand was so important in your family that you gave it a very important role at one of the most important events in your life.
That's right. Unfortunately, my dad unexpectedly passed away in February of 2020. So as I was planning my wedding last year, it was really important to us to have the wedding back in Iowa to honor my family's history there, but also have the Super MTA there to make sure that my dad's presence was seen and felt, since he couldn't be there with us that day. So our Super MTA served as a backdrop for photos, and all of our guests had a great time climbing around on the tractor, taking pictures, and it just meant the world to us.
And a new bride had to look beautiful on a beautiful little tractor.
Thank you, Max.
I say that's the only way some of these tractors look better, when you put a beautiful bride on them. That's a day that is so special in so many ways, isn't it?
For sure. Yep, it meant the world to us.
I'm sure with your sisters and everybody else in the family, it really made a very special tie. Well, thank you, Holly, for coming in to share the story with us. It's something that we've seen a few times over the years, where there's that bond that the tractor becomes larger than just the chore machine. And the Farmall has performed that role so many times for so many of our families. Thank you again.
Thank you, Max.
Holly Oldenburg being with us here on this special edition, celebrating Farmall 100. couldn't have this Farmo 100 celebration without visiting with some genuine farmers. And we have a couple of farmers here with us from the state of Missouri. Welcome, if you would, Sam and Raylyn Kelly from the northeast part of Missouri. Am I right about that? Mm-hmm. Husband and wife. How long have you been married? Raylyn, this hasn't been very long, has it?
About 3 months.
3 months. Well, you've begun a wonderful mission. Am I right that it's tractors that brought you together? Explain that, because you didn't come from the same area, right, Sam?
No, I did not. I came from northwest Missouri. I grew up around Maryville, Missouri. Growing up, my grandpa Luke, he had a farming operation. He raised cows and row crop, and all throughout helping him and stuff, he always used international tractors, farm-all tractors. He had a 560, a 400, two 1086s, a 986, and there wouldn't be many days that I wasn't out there helping him.
Now, that's northwest Missouri. Raylyn, you're from northeast Missouri.
Yes.
That's what, 150 miles or so across there?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Cahokia is the town where your farm is now, right?
Yes.
So how did you meet?
So we actually met about 6 years ago at a tractor pull in Unionville, Missouri. We both actually were working. For me, it was more of kind of a little test drive, but he's been doing it for the entire year. And we actually became best friends first, and then one day we just decided to risk our friendship and see how dating went, and here we are.
So you've been on many tractor pulls together, for example, through the years?
Probably a couple hundred.
I would say probably around there, yeah.
Tell us about your farming operation, the extent of it, and who all is involved in it, Raylyn.
So my farming operation, it's involved with my dad, brother, and I, and then Sam helps along on the side as well. We do primarily row crop, and I also have beef cattle as well. So we stay pretty busy with that year round, and it's a nonstop job.
You have some mama cows out there in that northeast part of Missouri?
Yep.
Cahokia, that's the town, right?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember that in my mind. Sam, do you enjoy working on the farm as well?
I do. Growing up, that's what I wanted to do in life, and I'm glad to be living out what I wanted to do.
There is a special tractor that you have that it wasn't just a given that you were going to own that tractor. Share with us the story about a very special 1086.
Okay. Growing up, that was this 1086, 1977 1086. My grandpa Locke bought it brand new from Stanberry, Missouri at Lawson Farm Equipment. And that tractor has a special place in my heart because that's the one I grew up driving around, raking hay, helping him on the farm. And then when Grandpa finally decided to retire, he went and had a retirement auction, and I knew I wanted something from the farm to take with me. And
were you thinking of a tractor specifically?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially this 1086, because it's never left the family or anything, bought brand new, and I wanted to make sure it stayed in the family. Well, the auction kept getting closer, and I had a price in my mind that I wanted to stay at. The closer it got to the auction, the sentimental value kept kicking in more and more, and I was like, you know what? I need to have this. It needs to stay in the family. So the auction day, when it happened, I was bidding against, I don't know how many other people, but I kept on bidding because I was not letting it leave. And finally, when the auctioneer rang it up and said, sold and it stays in the family, that meant quite a bit to me, and the smile on my Grandpa Luke's face was worth quite a bit.
Did he know that you were going to be bidding on his
I
tractor?
think he had an idea, yes.
Because my dad had no idea that I was going to buy that Super H at his auction. Nobody was more surprised. And there was a guy bidding against me who came by later on and apologized. But I would imagine there were so many there at the auction who didn't know who was actually bidding on it. in your case.
Actually, probably. Now, people around home, they kind of knew that I wanted it, and I got very many congratulations when I ended up with it.
I can imagine. Raylyn, and we have a half-minute left here. You have to tell me what your favorite Farmo model is of all your experiences.
I gotta say, it's a 1256. It's what I grew up on. My dad told me if I wanted to start pulling farm stocks, he made me go out with a 3-point hitch back up to hay bales because the clutch on it was definitely something of its own.
You had to watch that. Ray Lynn, Sam Kelly, thank you so much for being with us. We sure appreciate it. Sharing a personal story from the farm in Missouri. Well, two different parts of Missouri in this particular instance brought together in one family. Lee Clauncher, photographer, author of Tractor Books, comes back here to join us for just a few minutes. I have an admission here, pal. I think Max Armstrong may need some intervention. I keep acquiring so many of your books. I'm sure somebody in your warehouse says, oh, here goes some more to Armstrong. He's ordered more of these.
Well, and they're heavy too, so you're probably cluttering up your house.
Oh, don't they weigh about 7 pounds, something like that?
8 pounds each.
I tell folks, be careful. If you take one to bed, you're lying there, this could hurt you if this thing falls on you. They are just such great books. I've never used the expression coffee table book with these because there's so much utility to them. There's so much to learn from them. A coffee table book, you put it on the table, leave it. These are not only decorative, I would like to say, but they bring us so much knowledge. What's next? For goodness sake, how do you continue what you've done?
Well, we've done, obviously, red tractors. We've done the modern stuff. We've done red combines, which is the combine line, and red four-wheel drives, which is the modern four-wheel drive. So what's left is the original first half of a century of tractors. So we've got a new book for this special year called the Farmall Century, and it will cover the creation of the Farmall, actually going all the way back to the creation of IH, and we'll follow the Farmall brand right up to the modern day. So the heart and soul of the book will be Farmall up into the 1950s, but we'll also talk about how that brand lived on even to today.
So this will be the latest publication from Octane Press coming.
Yes, this will be coming in summer of 2023, and we'll start releasing it throughout the year. We'll have some opportunities for people to get a look at it.
What I like about your books quite often, you'll see themes running through there. And it's not just pictures, it's not just history, but you'll touch on, for example, collections. Is that going to be featured in this book too?
Absolutely, and one of the things we always try to do is give people looks at really unique machines. So in this book we have so much of that. One of the very special machines you're going to get a look at and learn the story of is the 100,000th Farmall. So when Farmall produced their 100,000th model, that was obviously a big milestone. And they did a big to-do back in the 1930s where they painted the machine silver and had a huge event at their plant. Some serious enthusiasts may have seen those pictures. Well, that actual tractor turned up in a pasture in Iowa, and a man restored it and painted it silver. And I've photographed that machine. It's a man named Ryan Peters. Like many collectors, kind of a historian himself, and it's a wonderful story and a very interesting snapshot in time.
You heard me laughing there because the legendary farm broadcaster Orion Samuelson grew up on an F-20, my colleague for more than 4 decades. That carcass was found in a pasture in Wisconsin. Oh. I acquired it, and there was a lot of work that went into that, thanks to our friends of Chapter 10, International Harvester Collectors Club. Those folks, no doubt, have been prominent to you and helping you provide information and sources and sometimes machines.
Absolutely, they have as well. And one of the other collections that I'll be in that I want to highlight is we got into the collection of John Kinzenbaugh. And he's the owner of Kinsey Manufacturing. They create all kinds of wagons and heavy equipment. And he's a very innovative guy, but he's also loves IH, has one of the largest collections of IH tractors in the world. And nobody had really been in to photograph it. He would bring people on tours here and there, but photographs hadn't been taken. We were there for 3 days taking photos of all his creations that range from some of the very first M's and H's built to, he also has some repowers. He would put bigger engines into machines, and they're kind of crazy, outrageous machines with V8 engines sticking out of them.
Right.
Very fun.
His collection is great, including that very first one that he was able to get back that his dad had. Octane Press. Where do we get more information about the Farmall book? Do we watch your website?
Go to our books are available anywhere books are sold, on our website, and also go to your local Case IH dealerships. Many of the dealerships carry these books. But if you want information, go to octanepress.com. If you want to get all the advanced information, sign up for our newsletter, our email newsletter. We'll be releasing sneak peeks and some special editions, all kinds of fun things.
I love that. There's a lot of extra stuff there. Thank you, sir. We sure appreciate your being with us this weekend.
Thank you much, Max. It's been great to be here.
Award-winning author Lee Clonsher. Well, before we wrap up this weekend, we visit one more time with Kurt Coffey and Joe Miller from Case IH about what's ahead. You want to be listening carefully now, because there's some things that you'll want to know about the celebration of Farmall 100 through 2023. Kurt, you guys are going to be very, very busy, and very, very soon, as a matter of fact, out there talking with folks about Farmall 100.
Yeah, a lot of farm shows that we participate in, we talked about earlier. We're really excited to be giving away next year a Farmall 75C, much like the one behind me. We'll be announcing that contest at the NCBA trade show in February, and that will go all the way through the FFA convention in October. So a lot of activity, but really excited to be able to announce that we're giving away a 75C.
There will be many events between those two, by the way, not just the Cattlemen's Convention and the FFA convention.
Many shows, if I tried to list them, I would probably miss a few, but for sure, Commodity Classic, Farm Progress. We're very active, as you know. We see you at all those shows, so very, very busy.
You do enjoy that opportunity to visit with folks I know and to reflect back on the legend of the tractor of the Farmall. But Joe, you're coming up with some new things too in the Farmall line.
We are, Max. If we start off today, we have 30 different Farmall models currently in our offering, from 35 horsepower to 140. They're offered in various trims, various cab configurations, drive configurations, and so on. So we stand by the Farmalls. We talk about Farmalls a lot. And what happens at every show is someone will come up and say, you know, my dad used to have one of these, or my grandfather had one of these, or at this farm I grew up on this model. And it was a good time for them to reflect on maybe their time with the farm, if they're no longer farming or no longer close to that operation, but still have a passion for agriculture. Additionally, they can give us some feedback. They would like to see different things that they found innovative and exciting in different tractors of different vintages, right, that they would like to see us incorporate. And when we talk about being built by farmers, we love that interaction with farmers, because as customers ourselves, we can relate, we can understand what we can do better as Case IH to listen to the farms and bring that forward in a good product.
I think sometimes I get a little bit tunnel visioned on the Farmall and how it is utilized if I'm just in one region of the country. And sometimes you forget about those various model options that you folks offer out there in the line that you might see in another region of the United States, for example.
Sure, absolutely. A popular model or a configuration in one part of North America is going to be completely different than in another part of North America. But what we hope for is that the experience is all the same, that people are, that the product exceeds customer expectations and that they're very happy with it. I think as we go through 2023, Max, I'd be remiss to say that the last 100 years we're going to celebrate. But it's also a kickoff for the next 100, right? We're not going to sit still. I think you're going to see some very exciting stuff from Farmall and from Case IH in this space. There might be a couple different models that we add into the mix. We're going to keep an eye towards sustainability and environmental stewardship as well as we look to some different models. So we've got a lot of excitement planned for the months ahead, and we look forward to sharing more of those details as as they're ready to become available.
One thing that occurs to me with these contrasting models here, my Super M back here reminds me of hot days in the sunshine. As a strapping junior high kid or grade school, it was hot, it was often uncomfortable. With the new models, the Farmall of today, you bring a lot of creature comfort there too, don't you?
Yeah, very much so. We've got very comfortable cabs. We've got air conditioning and heating and all of those things, which the Super M TA didn't have unless you were at speed. We have those creature comforts. We also have more bare bones tractors as well for people that are not, they're happy to be out on a ROPS tractor with just putting the old ball cap on and going.
Right.
So we try to fit as many applications as we can, as many farms, and not just farms, but governments, municipalities, schools, things like that, where we cannot find an application that would not benefit from owning a Farmall tractor.
Before we wrap up, there's a special calendar opportunity, right? Folks can go to the QR code.
Yes, sir, there is. There should be a QR code on the screen, and the first 1,000 entrants will receive a Farmall calendar from Case IH to celebrate this
Special
one.
collector's edition
Yes, sir.
Farmall calendar. We'll
Thank you,
see.
Matt.
Kurt, Joe, thank you so much. It's been a treat having you on our broadcast this weekend to talk about some exciting days ahead, a wonderful past, and an exciting future for the Farmall brand. Thank you for joining us this weekend. We certainly appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you next week on This Week in Agribusiness. So long. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.